Good evening. I'm Michael Brown, President of the School for Advanced Research, and it's my great pleasure to co-host with New Mexico Women in the Arts this special online event, Raven Comes Full Circle, with Dorothy Grant, this year's Katrin Lamon Resident Scholar at the School for Advanced Research. I'd like to thank those of you who made donations in support of this evening's event. Your generosity is helping us develop and present these new online programs to bring fresh and relevant content related to Native arts and issues of broad social concern. Coming up next week on May 21st at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on YouTube Live, we will be presenting our current Eric and Barbara Dobkin Fellow, Leah Madafragua, who'll be speaking on the subject of the effects of climate change and place-based arts. We're also offering all SAR members the opportunity to participate in a member conversation with Leah on May 26th at 2 p.m. Mountain. If you're interested in participating in that, you can visit the calendar on our website and register for the event. We'll be offering more events like this in the coming months, focused on a wide range of topics from New Mexico's history and culture to global issues. So check the calendar on the SAR website at sarweb.org and your email inboxes for updates. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Nancy Olson, President of New Mexico Women in the Arts, with whom SAR is collaborating on this event. Nancy, would you like to say something about your organization and its mission?
Thank you, Michael. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It is my pleasure to represent the New Mexico State Committee for the National Museum of Women in the Arts in co-sponsoring this program featuring Dorothy with the School for Advanced Research. Our organization's mission is to champion all women artists in the state of New Mexico. We are among 23 committees worldwide that support the National Museum of Women in the Arts. And the museum, for all of you who don't know, is in Washington, D.C. It is the only museum in the world devoted solely to women artists. So to learn more about our New Mexico committee, I invite you to visit our website at newmexicowomeninthearts.org. Michael will now introduce Dorothy Grant.
Thank you, Nancy. Before I do that, just some housekeeping. After Dorothy's presentation, she'll take questions from viewers. There are two ways to present questions. You can type questions into the question box to the right, on the right side of your screen on most computers, or you can electronically raise your hand by checking the appropriate box next to your name on the panel. If you have a microphone, it will then be unmuted and you can ask your question. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Behind the scenes, the ever efficient Lindsay Archuleta of our staff will be forwarding me and Nancy questions. I'll do my best to present them to Dorothy before we end the event. Dorothy Grant is a phenomenally successful Haida fashion designer and artist from Vancouver. In fact, arguably the most successful Indigenous designer working today. Her designs have appeared in many high-profile events, most recently in the Oscars red carpet in 2016, worn by actor Dwayne Howard. She was the Eric and Barbara Dobkin Artist Fellow at SAR in 2007. Her clothing is now in the collection of 13 museums. For her contributions to Canada's fashion industry and for mentoring young fashion designers through her example as an entrepreneur, she was awarded the Order of Canada in 2015, one of Canada's highest civilian honors. You can get a sense of the beauty of her work by looking at her website, which is dorothygrant.com. We'll begin with some pre-recorded material, and then Dorothy will pick up the baton and we'll go to questions and answers.
Welcome and thank you everyone for joining me here at School of Advanced Research for my webinar, Raven Comes Full Circle. My name is Dorothy Grant, and I'm from the Haida Nation. My Haida names are Skiljat Yuwans, Lady of Big Luck, and Huljat means she who has coppers everywhere she goes. I'm pleased to share my work in a montage of pictures. This represents 30 years of my fashion designs and fashion shows and some milestone events. I will talk a bit of my philosophy in clothing and my mission statement. I'll talk about my 17 years of my retail store, my 3 fashion labels, and about my ability to shift in these turbulent COVID-19 times. I graduated from design school in 1988, and by winter of 1989, I had a full 55-piece feastwear collection that I debuted in a media-covered fashion show at the Hotel Vancouver. 1989 for me was a time of transition, of innovating on the arts. It was about making an extensive statement as an artist and fashion designer. It was about taking place in the precarious world of fashion. At that time, no one dared use the art for something as trivial as fashion. There had to be a continuity from tradition, and the trick was to be that bridge, to show that my work comes from Haida tradition, but it does not demean my culture, and I was not appropriating my culture, but I was adding to it. My Haida Nation got behind me in support. In 1990, I took the same fashion show to Haida Gwaii and used my own people as models. Even some of the elders joined in. It was amazing as I saw my people stand up for me, and they were buying up whatever I made. My garments became about pride, and someone even said it was a game changer. It became a status marker. It was like a big wave whose ripple effect continued for a long, long time. My mission statement or philosophy of my clothing line is in one word, Yagudang. It is a Haida word that means to have respect for oneself and all that you encounter. In short, it is respect. I believe I have infused Yagudang effect of pride into my clothing line. For me, it was my anchor that kept me going during hard times. It was a reminder of my mission, the why I do what I do. It's also what I tell my models when they're about to go on the runway. It's about owning your own space and about holding your head up high. Yagudang means to respect yourself. I can proudly say I'm the only Native woman in Canada and the United States with a legal trademark. My company logo is the Hands Design. In 2008, I had it trademarked. This was not an easy task. I had the help of a trademark lawyer in Seattle who saw my work, and he said he wanted to help me trademark it before he retired. He worked in trademark law, and he said to see a lot of the David and Goliath stories of where the artist and the business world are at battles, and that the world of fashion and art can be a very vicious place of thievery if one didn't know how to protect it. I do believe the trademark, the little T beside my name and logo, actually stops the fashion world from copying my artwork. I won the trademark rights after 8 years of negotiations with a company that said it was too close to their company logo. I've been blessed and protected. Thanks to Thomas Hoffman, he slayed the giant for me. I survived 17 years as a store owner in downtown Vancouver, one of the most expensive places in the world to operate in retail. During those years, I witnessed and survived 3 recessions. My greatest joy was to outfit so many people from around the world, and even our local Native clientele would come in with a sense of pride. They came because they had a milestone in their life, and buying one of my garments marked that time for them. In those 17 years, we produced thousands of garments for a discerning clientele of politicians, judges, heads of state, and actors. The retail store was an expensive way to brand myself, but I left the store business with my reputation intact and with no debt. I closed my store in 2011. Today, I continue to make my 3 labeled lines of clothing in a small studio and have an online web-based store. I have come full circle. I have come to SAR in 2007 when I started a book project that was to be my memoir. Now, 13 years later, I've come back to full circle to revisit the writing, and a few more chapters have been added since then. Writing about oneself is one of the hardest tasks I've been challenged with. I had to dig deep into my ancestry to answer the question, why I do what I do, and why am I different? It was cathartic and soul-searching experience as I discovered my real ancestors, wherein I saw myself. After all, it is in my DNA. They say we are the sum of our parts. It was an eye-opening to me. These are the things that I will write about in my book. So Raven Comes Full Circle is about me as an artist, discovering a side of myself that I am Raven who has come full circle. I arrived at School of Advanced Research on March 9th. SAR for short is a pristine and lovely institute, and it's a piece of heaven in the middle of Santa Fe on the east side. SAR supports scholars and artists to complete a body of work they could not do otherwise, of which I'm very grateful to be here. I arrived here with 3 projects to complete: my memoir, a teaching curriculum, and a museum exhibition file. I was ready for the quiet research and writing time. But by my birthday, March 14th, all social events were canceled and SAR staff were taking their jobs home, and we were starting the self-quarantine. And now COVID-19 has become a new chapter in my book. It was not unusual for me to work in solitude on projects, as that is what I've done for years. I'm from Alaska, where we grew up in a kind of survival mode. So this is not new to me. I was prepared to hunker down with my writing projects. All that changed as I got into the vibe of the pandemic, and I realized I had to take care of things that were most important to me. Basically, my business of design was at stake. And so how was I going to take care of my company and the few employees that I have? What was I going to do to survive? So for today, I want to open up this conversation to you all and first tell you what I did. I, like everyone else in the world, spent sleepless nights full of anxiety and fear of the unknown, scary future. I felt healthy and confident that I could distance myself from society and the virus would not get me if I followed social distance rules, which I did, and we have for the past 10 weeks. So this is my solution. I called up my seamstress one day and I said, how much scrap fabric have we got? And she said, we have lots. And I said, so make up some face masks and use it all up. We put the samples online, they sold immediately, and people wanted more. My first series of masks, I donated the profits to Battered Women's Services in Vancouver. It felt very good to support women who were in crisis situation in abusive confined homes. I saw major fashion houses like Louis Vuitton and big brand fashion labels making fashion masks. Fashion is a reflection of where we all are at in society, in this world, and now in this pandemic. The masks is a real indicator of where we are. We are now making masks for First Nations Health in Canada, and we are sending masks to my nation of Haida elders in Haida. These face masks are going to be around us for a long time. To some, they have become personal style. There are many choices out there, and now these are things we never thought would become a fashion necessity. And I thought, what more could I bring to people as a designer? And I think about that daily. But when you think about it, masks are very intimate things. They are covering your face. It has to be practical, wearable, breathable, and comfortable and washable. And these are the things I think about. I also think about industry standards, such as fabric and the content, and stating that these masks do not protect you from the virus. They protect others, and they are your sense of security. And now they're mandatory almost everywhere you go. That, to me, is something that I have had to think about seriously, and think about what other products can I bring to the market that would be usable for people to feel that sense of security. That's how, in just a matter of overnight, our society has changed. But what also stands out for me is that this follows my philosophy of Yagudang. And Yagudang in Haida means that sense of pride and respect for oneself and for all the people you encounter. And that is about protection. It's about protecting yourself, protecting others, particularly your elders. That Yagudang is that sense of respect. So let's talk about the future, because it's not going to be the same, even after we're not quarantined anymore. It's going to be very different. And we all have seen what working at home is like and what we can do without. We have become a society of hoarders. We buy way too much food, too much clothes, too much tech stuff. We are obsessive consumers. I believe this virus will change a lot of our consuming behavior. It therefore will affect the whole economy. I hope we become more simple in our needs and more about our spiritual health. I like the phrase that I've come up with, and it's the new wealth. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I'm able to respond quickly and jump back in the ring again. In my business, I really never intended to. I wanted to sit back and complete all the projects I came here with. But I think about the positive side of what this virus has done for me, and it's pushed me back into the fashion arena in a new way, in a way that I am thinking about designing products for the masses and continuing with business. I cannot afford to sit and do nothing. For myself, I will use this as my creativity to give back and to create a new and useful products for your face and your body. I share this with you because this is my survival mode in my business, to protect others and keeping up with my philosophy of Yagudang.
Thank you, Dorothy. You know, it's funny, you're talking about the circumstances of your arrival, and I have to say, the SAR staff was really looking forward. You were fondly remembered from 2007, and it was kind of heartbreaking for all of us to leave you and Leah Fragua and our resident scholars too, to the isolation of the shutdown. And I remember running into you on campus when it was starting, and your first reaction was, you know, that you had to get home. And then when you realized that you're probably in a better place in Santa Fe, quieter place, and you know, all that room to move, that you seem to really adapt quickly to the circumstance. So I admire your resilience, which obviously has a long history. And I'm just sorry that we couldn't give you the kind of social environment that we normally offer to our resident scholars and artists. Let me start with a question just to back up in your career a little bit, and Nancy and I will trade off questions. You know, the usual trajectory in the fashion world is to apprentice yourself to, you know, an established designer initially, but clearly it doesn't sound like you did that. So how did you make that break without the prior experience of having worked with somebody, or did I misunderstand your personal history?
I always had a strong vision of my intent with fashion and Haida art and what I was going to do with it. I immediately out of design school hired appropriate people like seamstresses and pattern makers, and I just took designs from my portfolio that I created in design school, and I just started making it, and didn't stop until the end of 1989. So it was a clear vision. I really didn't come to the normal mainstream fashion.
Nancy, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I know you mentioned somewhere in the video, there was a piece about your elders. And I was interested to know if you seek opinion from your elders before you release certain designs and patterns.
No, it really is kind of what we view in Haida art and within our community as the artistic rights of creating something. When I did the fashion show in Skidegate in 1990, I had all the elders' approval, and that to me was all I needed, particularly when they wanted to buy everything that they saw.
So obviously they approve of your work. We know that.
Yeah, this is a major step. Yeah.
Yes.
No question.
Good. Okay, Michael?
Can you talk a little bit about the significance of Raven and all this? Obviously, you put that in your title. You referenced it once or twice. I know Raven has a powerful role in Northwest mythology. How does that relate to what you do and what you design?
It kind of relates to your Southwest coyote in that Raven trickster. Raven is there as our symbolic creature that teaches us lessons. You know, throughout life, we give recognition to Raven if we've learned something from a life lesson. There's all kinds of different phrases in Haida that reference Raven as the person who's the cause of it, or that is there to teach you a lesson. And it happens to be my crest. So, you know, we have this kind of debate about eagles and ravens, and we often think that eagles are pretty smart, but I kind of think ravens are smarter. Just my thought.
Well, it's obvious you've thought very deeply about your face masks and their use, of course. Are you considering some kind of designing a face shield? The reason why I say this, I guess some Italian designers are now doing that. They're working on that problem.
It's a good question. Thanks, Nancy. But right now we're just doing some other design models for the face shield. Yeah, that's a really good question, because that could be done. That could be done with all kinds of borders on top of the face mask that are Northwest Coast. You know, artists, listen up here, because this is what you could do. You could do all kinds of creative things with that. It's not just about me designing something. I think that it opens up a whole new product line that other artists can do.
Good.
We have a question from Sue, a Pratt fashion major, class of 67, asking, I wonder what other careers and life paths you followed before you made fashion your career. Did you come to fashion right out of the gate, or is this something you moved to?
I started when I was 33, which is kind of later in life. I was a traditional artist before that. I made baskets and button robes, and I trained in that from a Haida elder from Mass at Florence Edenshaw Davidson. I always give her credit. She's deceased now, but she was really my mentor, one who taught me kind of the values that go behind Haida art and what women do. And that she was really my foundation for the beginning of Haida art. Previous to that, nobody knows this, but I was a key punch operator in Seattle, and this was in the 70s. So I was all the Microsoft and Apple. I was in Honeywell and I was running programs on a computer with key punch cards. So that's a simple answer, quick answer.
Did that help at all? Did that
It
provide
helped.
anything
Yeah,
useful?
you know, I mean, I learned how to type real fast.
Great. Nancy?
Yes, I have a question here from Amy. She's asked, I wonder if you could talk about the colors that you use in your work.
Well, I try to use a rainbow of colors, but of course, black, red, and cream. Black and red are traditional Haida colors. And it really was in the beginning, it was about owning the colors and not being stigmatized into a certain set of colors, but it is the traditional colors. And when you look at it, take for instance the blouse I'm wearing, it is our traditional colors, but on a background of cream. And colors mean a lot to people. So, you know, we stretched it to all sorts of colors, but I don't go garish. I try to stick within classical principles of color. And for me, Haida art, black and red and cream is pretty classical. So what I mean by owning the color is like you keep doing it, and people recognize that that's my brand.
I've got a question from Frank. What advice do you have for new designers in a world that will likely be dominated by ever larger companies?
Oh, wow. It goes back to your values and sticking with your values, and making a presence is difficult now. I started out just pre all website, when everybody had a website, you know, and pre this whole branding thing, you know. So I think for young people, it's much more difficult, but it's doable. You've got to use your social media. You've got to be adamant about yourself and how you believe in yourself. It takes a lot to be an entrepreneur, but if you have an incredible design, I mean, I know lots of young entrepreneurs, and I say entrepreneurs in the sense of artists, that artists are entrepreneurs because they're making things on speculation, and everything that they're doing is from their heart and their own creativity. So being an entrepreneur, it takes a lot more courage and just being out there and believing in yourself.
I have one from Mary. How do you feel about non-Haida people wearing your garments, rich in Haida symbolism?
That's a question that I've gotten from day one. There's no simple answer. It's really about, you would not really say that to a jewelry carver that you would buy a jewelry bracelet from, or an artist making a print or a totem pole or a mask. You know, you don't think about that, but I just say that it's really about the person, that how they feel and attracted to Haida art. It's not about you desecrating Haida art just by wearing it. It's really about appreciating it and supporting the artist, just like you would buying a bracelet or a painting.
We've got a question from Lindsay. How do you feel that the fashion industry has changed for Native people since you first entered the business?
What's the question?
Has the fashion industry changed significantly for Native designers since you first entered the business?
Oh, yes, absolutely. When I first started, fashion houses, stores, galleries, everybody didn't know where to put me. Was I fashion? Was I art? And could they sell it? And that's why I had to open my own store, because nobody knew where to put me. I didn't fit in a mold. But when I opened my own store, it opened a whole world of opportunity for for us for the business, but for other young designers to aspire to, that I did open that door. I did open that door, and now it's like sometimes I think designers right now have to knock on the door, and they have to knock loud, and even push the door open themselves.
Can I ask a follow-up? Is there a big difference between working in Canada and the United States? I mean, they have different histories in terms of their relationship to Native Americans. I know it's a complicated issue, but from your perspective and experience, is there much of a difference?
I don't think so. I think United States is much larger. The buying capacity is much greater. In Canada, there's I think a more cultural awareness. I mean, I'm speaking just as a Haida artist and designer, that Canada knows about Haida art. The United States does too, but Canada is smaller and more about identity, about Haida art as being part of their persona of Canada. But in the United States, we have Alaska, we have all these Southwest art here. So it really is about identity and what you relate to. And of course, I'm a US and a Canadian citizen. And so I'm a cross-border person. I really don't try to define it as one or the other, but I do see the differences.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, I have a question from Antonio. I am Antonio from the Peruvian Amazon. This is my question. When I see your designs, I feel the supernatural Haida world coming from the ancestral world through yourself into this modern material world. I would like to give thanks to you as an important bridge person to follow. Many of the Amazonian artists know you already, and I would ask you a question in their name. How do you connect with the symbols that you use in your designs?
Well, Haida art is an ancient form. It consists of really just 4 elements, and it's how the artist puts it together. That is the trick about Haida art. It's also simplicity. It's one of the simplest looking form, Haida art forms, all of the shapes, like you have the ovoid, the T shape, and all that negative space. But how the artist puts it together is the real trick, and the training behind that comes from master artists, and that's what I've learned from. And to apply that onto clothing, it's a different story than applying it to totem poles or masks. When you're applying it to the body, it's a different story. So that's where the sort of design element, or knowing how to use that in fashion, is to me what makes a good garment. And you know, those symbols are unique. And for me, I don't try to change those traditional symbols. I work within it because it's already there. I've been given the palette. I've been given the rules, and then I make up the designs that are according to those rules. So it's not within me to try and change them and make them any better. Although there are people that do that and they're successful about it, I believe in sticking within the construct of Haida art and the form line.
Rashmi is one of our resident scholars, one of your neighbors on the campus. You probably met her.
Hi, Rashmi.
She has a question. As you write your memoir, are you following or are you inspired by Haida writing traditions? Or do you have some other literary model to write about your art and your business? It's a great question.
I'm writing all about my experience over the 30 years. You know, when I first came here, James Brooks was the president here in 2007. And he approached me and he said, Dorothy, think about writing a book because your experience and what you do is so unique. And really at the time, I never really thought about it. I never thought that I was unique or that I had a message. And then over the years, it just kind of started to compile more and more and more. So there really isn't a style or something that I'm drawing from, other than sort of the ethics behind Haida art and how I've followed that within my career, and kind of never sold out to the larger fashion world. But that too has to do with following a certain set of principles within my culture, within Haida art, and of course listening to elders and knowing that yes, I do have a message to share. And my writing style is my own. I'm not academic about it. I just write from my experience.
Do you feel, just to follow up Rashmi's question, do you feel that there's some aspect of Haida expository styles, storytelling and so on that you're following, or are you really just kind of doing it in your own way?
I'm doing it in my own way.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And that's yet to be seen yet, because I've had almost 10 weeks here. Most of that time has been just in this, like everybody else, in surviving what was important, what I just talked about, and surviving of COVID. And the book project kind of had to take a back burner, but I would say I arrived here with half of the writing done. So, it's like another chapter has evolved while I've been here. And so in a sense, I've been writing about that.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, I have a question from Raquel, who asks, what led you to decide on a design school curriculum?
Oh, it's a curriculum that I'm writing, and I'm designing it just like a garment, but and I'm excited by this more than I am the memoir, because it gives back to the younger people who, kind of not even taught basic life skills. But this is a 5-day course that I want to teach called Entrepreneurship and Design. And it is about how do you be an entrepreneur? Are you cut out to be an entrepreneur? And what does it take? And so they're basic principles about setting up a business, about taking a design idea, and what constitutes a good design. Because I've been the test, I've tested the model out myself for the past 30 years. So it's writing. As I started to write my memoirs and all about these life skills and business skills that I learned, it was like, oh, these are teachable moments. These are things that I can teach. And then somebody said, well, you really should teach that. You really should teach that in university. So that was the project that I arrived here at, and I'm currently like fleshing out that whole curriculum now. And
I've got a question from Bobby, which is related to that. So do you ever teach design courses as opposed to the entrepreneurship, or?
Well, that's part of it. That's like a two-sided coin. So you got the entrepreneurship side, which is practical business skills and setting up like a business plan. And, like I wouldn't advise people to open up a store like I did, in the beginning. Not unless you have $1 million, I wouldn't advise that. But there are certain other things that people can do, young people can do, and sometimes they don't think about it. But if there's a classroom where we can all just talk about that and talk about people's ideas, because young people in the arts is so important. They could be a foundation for the next 10 years going forward, is all these young entrepreneurs coming up with incredible ideas. But they need to know some basics. So the other side of that coin is design. What's a good design, right? I mean, we can have a good idea and you think it's a great idea, but how do you make that and bring that to market? How do you do that? Well, I know how to do that. So that's what excites me. That's what excites me, to be able to teach that and bring it to the table to people. And okay, we're going to now challenge you to design something, and I know how to offer that.
Great, thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, this is from Stephen. He says, fabulous fashion. Wondered if you might talk a little bit about the role of museums, and have you gained much insight from museum collections? In other words, fashion collections.
Oh, fashion collections. You know, in the beginning, I didn't, because I said I arrived at my my learning. It was going to be about Haida art. It was going to be about applying it to fashion or to the body. I of course studied fashion and mainstream and what goes on in the industry, and I think it's very important that young designers adhere to industry rules like proper labeling and you know how do you pay attention to the world of fashion. Like now we've been turned around like 180 degrees in fashion. So designers have to know how to pay attention to that and act quickly because you know it's very difficult to sell a $2,000 garment in this kind of era. So changing design mode and thinking is what I think a good designer should do, is be able to adapt to society.
Mm-hmm.
Not losing yourself or not losing your values. There's ways of doing that, and that's what I'm seeing now. You're seeing everybody doing masks now, and it's like a phenomena. Everybody needs masks. So listening to the fashion industry, listening to yourself, knowing what your capacity is, knowing what you can do to contribute, and even knowing how to market. Yeah.
Amy asks, did your time at SAR in '07 influence your work in any particular way? Did you find that being in the Southwest changed the way you looked at your own material, or were you just in your Haida bubble doing your design work?
Oh, well, I also did a lot of traditional work while I was here. I made 3-button robes, and I designed some things, and I went back to Vancouver and opened back up my production and my store. I put that on hold for a bit. But, you know, in terms of influence, the Southwest is an incredible art mecca here. I think just being around artists all the time, being around this community, just strengthened me as an artist, that I knew that I was on my path. I was on the place that I should be. My genre is Haida art, so I stick with that. And I think I influence people here, and they influence me, but that was really on a personal level.
Thank you. Nancy.
Peggy asks, do you have words of wisdom for young entrepreneurs about how to run the business side of an art business?
For artists or fashion designers, or both?
Well, I think she's talking about maybe art in general. You know, as an artist entrepreneur, how do you make art and be a business person at the same time?
That's what I mean about entrepreneurship and design. There's a balance. You can't think that you have some great idea and then produce it and then overprice it. You have to be sensitive to the market. You have to study the market. You have to do research. Like, you can't make a bracelet and just think because it's a great piece that you think is your piece de la resistance that you can charge $10,000 for it, and the market's not going to bear that. You have to come down to the market and be sensitive to that, and really know what you're capable of. And I think in this COVID-19 era, especially artists have to be sensitive to that. Like, you can't make a $10,000 piece. Maybe you can, maybe you've got the clientele for that, but going forward in this next year, I think artists have to be very, very careful about what they should be producing. I mean, I've got artists that are saying, oh, I want to open up a fashion design company now. Like, why? You've been doing great artwork for 20 years. Why do you want to do a fashion design company? Just because, you know, that's not a good idea. Stick with what you know. That's what I say.
Right.
There's a great question here from Stephen. It's a little complicated, but I'll try and get it all right here. Following up on the question of non-Haida people wearing Haida designs, what do you think about non-Haida people using Haida or Northwest Coast imagery in their designs, the Anglos or others? Should indigenous influence fashion be solely the purview of descendant culture bearers? I'm thinking about Ainu as well as Inuit and Australian Aboriginal designs.
That is like a topic, Michael, that should have a whole seminar on. I, for one, am against non-Native people using and taking from indigenous culture and, you know, making a living off of it. I don't know. I could get really rude and say some things, but I'm going to try to be very diplomatic and just say it's against the law in United States. Cultural appropriation has been happening for far too long. Support the designers who are First Nations, who are Native American, who are putting themselves out there and showcasing their culture. Support them. You know, too much has been taken from Native American people, too much. To take our culture and to use it on products is happening way, way too much, way too much. We, like I said, there could be a whole seminar on this. There could be papers delivered on that, and it has been. Cultural appropriation, it's a big question. So we won't open that can of worms, but that's what I just say.
Well, I wrote a book about it once, 13 years ago. But to follow up, one of the things I discovered, by the way, I completely agree with you. I mean, the book is really about let's just call it the crime of cultural appropriation. But when you get down into the weeds of trying to figure out how to enforce, you know, opposition to it, it's very complicated. And some of the people I interviewed for that project, I think were just naively thought they were showing respect for Native people by, you know, using their design elements in their work. So some of it came not necessarily, and this is not to defend it, but simply to say that sometimes people don't realize how hurtful and harmful it is to do that. They think it's just kind of out there in the world, and gosh, you know, I'm inspired by it, so I'd like to weave that into my art or into my cultural performance of one sort or another. Which makes it very difficult then. I mean, they depend on people like you to educate them and how hurtful and harmful it actually is.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to just say, oh, I was just trying to share your culture with the rest of the world. Well, leave that up to the First Nations and the First Americans to do that.
Absolutely, sure, I agree.
Nancy.
Nancy.
A question from Jan, who was noticing your beautiful blouse there you're wearing. Please describe how it's made. Is it applique, machine work, embroidery?
Well, this is my custom design print. It is made out of a linen cotton, and it's silk screened, and then we make up the design. And we did dresses and we did blouses, we did evening wear, we did vests, we did all kinds of things, and it all sold. And then we had piles of scraps from these, and we don't throw anything away. My seamstress saves everything. So that's what I mean when I called her up and I said, how much scraps have you got? And she said, oh, got lots. So that's what the first series of masks were about, was this fabric. And I do believe I should bring it back because I'm totally out of this fabric. Yeah, it's again, it's taking my culture and printing it on fabric and making it accessible. And it's my way of bringing Haida art into the larger arena, into the masses, without going into the mainstream fashion, because my work has never been mainstream fashion.
Mhm.
I've got a question from Elizabeth that picks up the theme of masks that you were just referencing. She asks, how are face masks becoming a means to communicate a person's identity? She was just in New Zealand and was struck by the impact of facial tattoos, especially on women, and as a way of asserting or transmitting a cultural identity of a particular sort. So is that part of your thinking when you do the masks, or are you?
No, not at all. I think tattooing is a cultural technique. The Maoris and the Haidas and many Native Americans have used tattoos for thousands of years. That's not at all this at all. This is the facial masks is a response to a need in society that's going to be around for a long time. And it's about survival and respect. It has nothing to do with facial tattoos at all.
Okay. Well, a question from Sharon. Who inspires you today?
Women, strong women, women who know who they are, and they want to be make an entrance to a place that, it's like walking into your place of power. And also men too, who have that same need. That's what I thrive on, is when I can make a garment for somebody and I know that they've got to rise to a situation, whether it's like walking the red carpet or receiving some kind of award. When I make a garment for them and feel like they stand 10 feet tall, that's when I do my job. I know my job.
I've got a question from Corey. How do you feel about your work being collected by art museums? Do you think these curators make good choices in collecting your fashions or other Indigenous designers?
I've been at this for 30 years. When I first came out of the gate with this, Museum of Civilization in Canada, now called the Canadian Museum of History, Dr. George MacDonald, rest in peace, called me up and he says, Dorothy, we saw your fashion show. We want to buy a couple of your garments. That was like, wow. He's, I don't know if I could say he started it, but he had insight that this marked an era of a change in Haida art, and he wanted those first pieces for his museum. And it just kept going and going throughout the years of my career. It's kept going. I coined this phrase, and I have to share this because it'll be part of one of my chapters in my book. I coined this phrase and I said, Raven knows what's in my closet. And it's about serendipity and how throughout my career, there were times when I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills, how I was going to pay the rent and my employees. And I actually came back, Michael, from SAR in 2007. And I had a debt load because I had kept my seamstresses busy and I kept my studio, and I had a lot of debt. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I've always had faith that, things would turn out and, you just kind of push things and everything balances out. Well, I got this email from Liverpool New World Museum. Just out of the blue, and she said, the curator said, we'd like to know if you have any of your original 1989 feastwear, and we'd like to also buy a button robe from you, and if you have a hat, that would be great. I mean, like, I had $25,000 to pay, and And I was like, oh my God, because I had worked on button robes here. I had a hat and I had this incredible feastwear garment that was an original piece from, you know, the 89 collection. And I said, I sure do. I sure do. And that's my Raven knows what's in your closet. What no Raven knew what was in my closet. I had those people. We sent them off and I was clear. I was clear. I was happy. I was ready to go again.
I have a question from Laura, who's obviously been talking to Raven. She wants to know if you'll be selling masks for people in Santa Fe to buy. Do you want to direct people to your website? Do you have some other place where they're going to be available?
Well, we are producing them like crazy right now, and I'm having my my guys up in Vancouver send me 200 pieces here in Santa Fe, so I will have them around, and I will be here at least until May 31st. So I will have some here, and if they don't all sell, I'm hoping that one of the museums here will take them because they're going to be like needed. So you know, I will have pieces here.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we've just about hit the last of the questions. Wait a minute. This one is, you share cultural awareness with the Maoris regularly. How similar are these two cultures? It's a hi from Australia. There you've got some.
Hey, hi. Who was that?
It's Joanne. Joanne
Okay.
asked.
They're kind of cousin tribes, Haida and the Maori. Very similar. We're canoe people. We're, you know, tattoos, our form lines are pretty similar. I mean, it's amazing how closely related we are to the Maoris. And I was there in 2014 at Tipapa. I did a fashion show there with other Maori designers. It was one of the great milestones in my career was to be with the Maori people. Totally love you guys down there. You are our people.
Thank you. Well, Dorothy Grant, this has been a wonderful hour. We're so grateful for your contribution. We're looking forward to see where your work and your career go after this, and we'll find a way to get you back to Santa Fe, perhaps when Indian Market reopens.
I love SAR. I am so grateful to be here during this time. I feel safe. I feel creative. I feel loved. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a privilege, and just reminding everyone that Dorothy's website is dorothygrant.com, and there's beautiful stuff there, not just masks, but all kinds of gorgeous blouses and scarves and things that you should look at. They're very reasonably priced and they're drop dead gorgeous. So you have a lot of fans in Santa Fe, and I'm sure in the rest of the world.
Can I just say, Michael, you're going to be posting this interview on YouTube?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. There are people that I think that are trying to connect that couldn't get on.
Okay.
Yeah.
It should be up within a day or two, and I'm sure you'll have thousands of viewers over time. So
I will post that on my social media, and it's been just a thrill. Love
Great.
being here. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Nancy, and we'll end there. Best to everybody.
Good night.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Good night now.